So this loser pretends to be a secret agent so that he can seduce women and scam them out of money. So the guy's name is Freegard, and Freegard is 22 when all this starts, and he's living in England, and he works as a bartender at a local bar. But here's the thing about Freegard. He's also a con artist, and a really good one. And one day, around 1993, he gets the opportunity to pull a crazy scheme. Because he's at work that day and he meets a customer, this guy, Jhoan. And Jhoan is a student at a nearby university. So Freegard strikes up a conversation with Jhoan, and because he's a con man, he starts lying to him. He tells him this bullshit story about how he's a super secret special agent for MI5, which is like the British version of the FBI. And that he's on a mission to investigate some students at the university who are suspected to be terrorists. And Jhoan not only believes him, but he really wants to help. Now, Freegard also ends up meeting two of Jhoan's friends at the bar. And at some point, Freegard tells Jhoan that his cover has been blown and that they're all in danger and that they should all flee immediately or they'll all be killed. And so the four of them leave on this cross-country trip. This is an actual picture of the four of them. And a few days into this trip, Freegard tells them that a terrorist organization is tracking them and that they have to keep moving to protect their lives and the lives of their families. And they have to stay off the grid in order to avoid being tracked, so they aren't allowed to contact any of their outside friends or family. And these guys actually listen to him and they believe him. So after traveling around for a while, they find an apartment in Sheffield, England that they can rent and stay in. And Freegard is still hyping them up, and he's telling them they're in danger, and he convinces them to change their appearances. He makes them cut their hair and dye their hair. He also makes them change their names. Then he tells them that they all have to find jobs, because, someone's got to pay the rent around here. And when they do get jobs and get paid, he collects all of their salaries. I guess because, he's the secret agent, so he needs to handle the money. And this weird arrangement goes on for several months. Then, one day, Freegard will just randomly tell them, "Oh no, our location has been compromised." And he'll force them to abandon their jobs and move to another city. And there, in the new city, they'll have to get a whole new apartment and whole new jobs. And a few months later, he'll do the same thing. And he'll force them to move to another new city. And then he'll do it again and again. And this cycle goes on for about 5 years. And so it's now 1998. And these three still believe that he's an MI5 agent and that they're being hunted by terrorists. And around this point, Freegard tells them that MI5 is now requiring payment for their protection. And he tells them they must raise a large amount of money, which they don't have. So he convinces them to start asking their parents for money. And shockingly, this actually works. These three start hitting up their parents and asking them for money, and they're able to collect around a total of £500,000, or about $650,000 US. And now it's around this time that Jhoan, he starts figuring out that he's being lied to, and that Freegard isn't really an MI5 agent, he's just a fucking liar. So Jhoan ends up leaving the group. But the other two women, they don't. They are still very much on board. And Freegard ends up getting into a relationship with one of these women, and he gets her pregnant. Twice. Anyway, so now we're in 2001, 2002, and this weird con has been going on for nearly 10 years. And they've been living off that money they got from their parents for a long while now. But eventually, that money runs out. So now, Freegard has got to start searching for new victims. And so some time passes, and at this point in the story, they've all relocated to West London. And there, Freegard himself actually gets a job as a car salesman at a local car dealership. And he uses this job to meet other women. And he'll tell them the same old thing, that he's a super secret special MI5 agent, and then he'll smash with them, and then he'll steal from them. Now, one of these women he meets is this woman, Elizabeth. And Elizabeth is 22 and she's newly married. She's just 6 months into her marriage. But pretty quickly, Frigard and Elizabeth, they start talking, and then they start flirting, and soon they start smashing. And of course, Frigard starts telling her that he's an MI5 agent on a super secret special mission, and she believes him. He then convinces her that because she's with him, she's now in danger, and a terrorist organization is after her, and that she must cut off all contact with her family and her friends, including her husband. And of course, she does. Afterwards, he convinces her that they need to get married. But first, he says that she must undergo loyalty tests to prove to MI5 that she's trustworthy enough to be with him. And he gives her these tests, and he tells her to dye her hair, and he makes her sleep at Heathrow Airport for multiple days. He forces her to live on park benches during the winter. All kinds of crazy shit, and she does it. Then he pressures her into taking out more than 14,000 pounds in loans and giving him the money, which, again, she does. And so, what does Frigard do with all this money he collected from Elizabeth and all the others that he got money from? Well, he not only uses it to live on, but he also spends it on himself. Like, he buys expensive clothes and nice cars, and he goes on fancy trips, and he basically gives himself a flashy lifestyle. Then, in 2002, he uses this flashy lifestyle to reel in yet another woman. This woman, Kim. And Kim is a psychologist. And so Frigard tells Kim, of course, that he's an MI5 agent, and soon they start smashing. And he's taking her out, he's taking her on holiday trips, and he promises to marry her and stuff. But then he tells her that before they get married, she must first become a spy like him. And that would entail full commitment on her part. And I guess she's like, all right. So she quits her job as a school psychologist, and she cuts off contact with her family and friends completely. Once she does all that, he convinces her to ask her parents to pay 20,000 pounds for her spy training, because he lies to her and tells her that she has to go through spy training. And she does ask, and her parents actually agree to give her the money. And because that was successful, Frigard keeps asking Kim to ask them for more and more money, and she does. So it feels like the dude is just gonna keep lying and scamming everyone, and he's never gonna get caught. Until... Okay, see, but what Frigard doesn't know is that one of the women that he previously scammed in the past, one he met at the car dealership and smashed with and stole money from, that woman had reported him to the police long ago. So police have been tracking him for some time now, and they eventually discover that he's now trying to scam Kim's parents. So they approach Kim's parents, and they tell them the truth about Frigard and all the conning he's done in the past. And in 2003, Kim's parents agreed to help with a little sting operation. So Kim's mom hits up Frigard one day and agrees to give him the money that he's asking for in cash if he'll meet her at the local airport. And so Frigard's dumbass shows up at the local airport hoping to collect his money, and the police are there waiting for him, and so, bam, he gets arrested. And I couldn't find a mugshot, but here is a picture of him at a local dog show. Anyway, Frigard, he eventually gets sentenced to life in prison. However, a few years later, he gets out on appeal based on a technicality. Damn.